Okay, so you want to own an NHL hockey team. Find a city, sign the players, watch the arena fill up with fans who paint their faces in minus 20-degree weather, and call it a casual Tuesday. But here is the part that surprises almost everyone who looks at these numbers seriously. The NHL is the only major North American professional sports league where the most valuable franchise is worth less than the least valuable team in the NFL. And yet ownership groups keep paying record prices to get in. The asset values keep climbing every single year. And the business model has proven more recession-resistant than almost any other entertainment product in the markets where hockey is culturally dominant. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how NHL teams actually make money, why the league's economics look so different from the NBA and NFL at the top, but so similar at the bottom, why certain markets print money while others burn through it, and why the single most important decision any hockey owner makes has nothing to do with who they draft. First, the price of entry. In 2023, a new ownership group acquired the Ottawa Senators for $900 million, a Canadian franchise in a mid-sized market that generates modest revenue by league standards. That same year, valuation estimates for the Toronto Maple Leafs pushed past $2.2 billion. The Vegas Golden Knights, which did not exist until 2017, are already valued at over $800 million after one of the most commercially successful expansion launches in professional sports history. And the Seattle Kraken, which began play in 2021, sold their expansion slot to an ownership group for $650 million before a single game was played, before a single jersey was sold, before a single local television deal was signed. The floor of NHL franchise values has roughly tripled in the last 10 years. The ceiling has not stopped moving. So what are you actually buying? You are buying a license to operate in one of the most geographically specific sports businesses in the world. Hockey has a fan base that is intensely concentrated in specific markets and almost entirely absent in others. This is not a problem unique to the NHL, but the NHL version of it is more extreme than any other major league. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Boston Bruins exist in markets where hockey is a cultural religion that predates television, interstate highways, and in some cases, the countries themselves. These franchises do not compete for entertainment dollars against the NBA or NFL with any serious anxiety. They are the default, the inherited loyalty, the team your grandfather watched on a black and white set in a living room that smelled like cigarettes and wool socks. And that inherited loyalty is worth something that no expansion team, no matter how clever the marketing, can replicate on a short timeline. The Vegas Golden Knights proved that a new franchise in a non-traditional market could build genuine cultural attachment faster than anyone expected, winning the Stanley Cup in 2023 in only their 6th year of existence. But Vegas is not a template that transfers. It is a specific convergence of a tourism economy, a city with no other major sports culture to compete against, an ownership group that spent aggressively on the arena experience, and a roster that overperformed expectations from day one. Remove any one of those variables, and the Golden Knights story looks different. The franchises that have tried the expansion formula in traditional non-hockey Sunbelt markets have rarely produced the same result. Now, where does the money come from? The NHL's revenue model has 4 main engines, and the first is the national broadcast deal, which is where the league's financial profile diverges most sharply from the NFL and NBA. The NHL's American national television deal with ESPN and Turner, signed in 2021, runs approximately $625 million per year across 7 years. Divide that among 32 teams, and each franchise receives roughly $19 to $20 million per year in American national broadcast revenue. Compare that to the NFL's roughly $320 million per team per year, or the NBA's $250 million per team per year, and the structural disadvantage of the NHL's national television position becomes immediately clear. The NHL is not a national television product in the United States the way football and basketball are. It is a regional product with a passionate, concentrated audience that has never fully translated into the mass market viewership that drives the largest broadcast contracts. Canada, however, is a completely different calculation. Rogers Communications signed a 12-year national broadcast deal with the NHL in 2013, worth approximately 4.9 billion Canadian dollars, covering all Canadian rights through 2026, For Canadian franchises, the national broadcast revenue per team is significantly higher than the American allocation. A franchise like the Toronto Maple Leafs operates in an environment where the national rights deal alone generates more meaningful per-team revenue than the entire American deal produces for its recipients. The Canadian market is smaller, but the hockey audience within it is proportionally enormous, and the broadcast dollars reflect that reality completely. The second engine is gate revenue, and this is where the NHL's business model reveals its genuine strength. Unlike the NFL, which plays 8 home games per regular season, an NHL team plays 41 home games per year. 41 chances to fill an arena, sell concessions, move merchandise, and activate sponsor relationships inside the building. A sold-out NHL arena at average ticket prices generates somewhere between $1 and $3 million per game, depending on the market and the opponent. For the Maple Leafs at Scotiabank Arena, those numbers push toward the top of that range on virtually every game night. Toronto has sold out every home game for decades. There is a waiting list for season tickets that is not measured in months. It is measured in years. The waiting list is a cultural artifact, a status symbol, a thing people put in their wills. The building is always full because the demand has never come close to being satisfied by the available supply of seats. The third engine is local and regional media. Similar to the NBA structure, local broadcast rights belong to individual teams and are not shared equally across the league. A franchise in a major hockey market commands a regional deal that dwarfs what a franchise in a non-traditional market can negotiate. The Maple Leafs' regional broadcast arrangements generate 9 figures annually. A franchise in a market where hockey is not the dominant sport generates a fraction of that from local media. This gap is one of the most significant sources of financial inequality within the NHL, and the primary reason the league's revenue-sharing program exists, to transfer money from the high-revenue Canadian and major market American franchises to the franchises in non-traditional markets that cannot generate enough local revenue to stay competitive without assistance. The fourth engine is arena revenue beyond the games, which for NHL teams with arena control includes concerts, other sporting events, family shows, and year-round facility operations. The difference between owning your building and being a tenant in someone else's is enormous, and applies to hockey ownership exactly as it applies to every other professional sports business. The Vegas Golden Knights play in T-Mobile Arena, which they do not own, but which sits inside an entertainment ecosystem where the team's games are one component of a broader hospitality and tourism machine. The Detroit Red Wings moved into Little Caesars Arena in 2017 as part of a broader real estate development project called the District Detroit that has generated asset appreciation well beyond the arena itself. When you buy a hockey team, you are frequently buying into a real estate thesis, whether you realize it or not. Now, here is the part that breaks the simple revenue model apart. The costs of operating an NHL franchise are staggeringly high relative to the revenue at the bottom half of the league, and the salary cap is the mechanism that keeps the competitive balance reasonably intact while simultaneously making financial management extraordinarily difficult. The NHL salary cap for the 2024-25 season sits at approximately $88 million, which is both a ceiling and, functionally, a floor. Teams that spend significantly below the cap midpoint face restrictions on certain roster management tools. Teams that spend at the ceiling are operating player payrolls that consume an enormous percentage of their total revenue, particularly in the lower revenue markets. A franchise generating $150 million in total annual revenue and spending $85 million on player salaries before coaching, medical, travel, and operational costs is working with margins that require everything else in the building to operate efficiently to stay solvent. The cap also creates perverse incentives around long-term contracts. Teams sign star players to 8-year maximum term contracts specifically to spread salary cap hits across years when those players may be in decline. The Tampa Bay Lightning won back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021 by building a roster so deep and so well constructed that when the cap eventually forced them to shed talent, the franchise still competed at an elite level. That roster construction discipline is as financially sophisticated as any private equity portfolio management, and the general managers who do it well are among the most valuable front office executives in professional sports. Travel costs in the NHL are among the highest in professional sports because the league spans the continent from Miami to Edmonton, and because the schedule requires teams to play multiple games per week across enormous distances. A West Coast team playing an East Coast road trip flies charter across multiple time zones multiple times per month. The annual travel budget for an NHL franchise runs between $10 and $20 million, and that number does not compress easily because the schedule is set by the league, not by the team's budget office. Player development costs add another layer that is specific to hockey and does not have a direct parallel in other major North American sports. Every NHL team operates and finances an American Hockey League affiliate, its primary development league, and often contributes to additional minor league relationships. The cost of running an AHL affiliate, covering player salaries at that level, supporting coaching and medical staff, and funding the developmental pipeline runs between $8 and $15 million annually. You are not just running an NHL team. You are running a professional hockey operation that spans multiple leagues simultaneously. Two failure modes show up repeatedly across NHL history. The first is the wrong market. The Phoenix Coyotes played in the desert for nearly 3 decades, perpetually among the league's lowest revenue franchises, unable to generate enough local broadcast revenue, consistent gate revenue, or corporate sponsorship to operate without league financial support. The franchise relocated to Salt Lake City to become the Utah Hockey Club in 2024, ending one of the longest and most visible market mismatches in professional sports. Hockey people in the organization were excellent. The market was not. The Phoenix Coyotes did not fail because of bad hockey decisions. They failed because hockey in the desert never became culturally embedded in the way the league had hoped when they expanded Southwest decades earlier. The second failure mode is the arena trap. Teams playing in aging facilities without favorable lease terms or renovation paths find themselves in a cycle where the building costs money every year through deferred maintenance, poor fan experience relative to newer venues, and unfavorable revenue-sharing arrangements with municipal landlords. The arena is the second most important asset in professional hockey after the roster, and teams that do not control their building or have a credible path to a new one are at a structural disadvantage that compounds across decades. 2 scenarios, real numbers. Scenario 1. You own a Canadian franchise in a passionate hockey market. Annual revenue runs approximately $250 to $300 million. Player payroll runs $82 to $87 million. Total operating costs, including front office, travel, development league, arena operations, and coaching, run an additional $80 to $100 million. Your operating income lands somewhere between $60 and $120 million per year in a strong year. The franchise appreciated by $100 to $150 million in asset value. During the same period, you are building generational wealth in a city where owning the hockey team is the closest thing to a civic responsibility. Scenario 2. You own a Sunbelt franchise in a non-traditional market. Annual revenue runs $80 to $110 million. The league's revenue-sharing program transfers $15 to $25 million to you annually to keep you competitive. Your payroll obligations under the cap require spending at or near the cap floor, which is mandatory, not optional. After all costs, your operating margin is thin or negative in a bad year. The franchise value still climbs because the league's expansion and relocation dynamics create a floor beneath every seat at the table, but you are not running a profitable standalone business. You are holding an appreciating asset that costs money to maintain, while you wait for the market to develop, the arena situation to resolve, or a buyer willing to pay more than you did. If you do decide to buy an NHL team, here is the most important rule of this business. Hockey is the most market-dependent sport in professional sports. The same franchise, the same roster, the same front office, the same everything generates twice the revenue in Toronto that it generates in Arizona. Find the right market, or build one, because in this league, the market is not a background condition. It is the entire business.